Nothing went to plan, but this is the story of the not-so-secret fork and the invasion of the micro salmon. The ricochet of single hook regulations almost took my right eye in preparation for this trip. Like a well-choreographed dance, I geared up yet again for what was supposed to be another big outing. Freeze-dried food, it was all stuffed away in boxes, and the rods were rigged up. The maps were looking as good as they could, and the last thing on the docket was to get some up-to-date info on what was going on in the drainage itself. Awesome, thank you so much for the information. This is going to be very helpful to my trip, and no trailers, so I should be good. I've got a little truck that can probably eat those little mountain roads like no problem. So I always make it a habit to call the local ranger districts before I embark to get a more detailed picture of what's going on in the area from someone who's actually experiencing it in real time. Now, I fully expected to hear about rutted out roads and rut-hungry hunters, but I was very glad I asked about bears in the area. I got one more quick question.
Sure, right ahead.
What are the bear densities like in that area?
We actually closed Kelly Fork because of that. We've had some problems there. We do have an awful lot of bear hunters too that converged on that area.
Okay, cool. Well, I will definitely keep that in mind. I plan on doing a lot of truck camping, so not exactly much need to hang food and whatnot, but it's always good. I'm going to carry the bear spray, do the whole, due diligence there, so awesome. And with the last bit of work responsibilities tied up, the afternoon was all mine, so obviously I was gonna get an early start on this trip. I hit a smattering of late summer traffic on my way out of Nampa, but with 6 more hours of road time in my future, I figured this wouldn't be my last. With Idaho being such a massive state, I have yet to even scrape the surface of what she has to offer. This trip, it would be no different. I was driving headfirst into the unknown with nothing more than outdated angling books offering a trail of stale breadcrumbs. The path, it was faint, but definitely visible. A lot of junk was packed in tight, but the only thing riding shotgun for this trip would be a whole lot of faith that the words were true and things had not changed. Sailing was smooth as the landscape melted and morphed around, showing all the different shapes Idaho can offer. But my hunch from earlier came to haunt me as brake lights lit up my windshield. This untimely mountain pass construction held up a caravan of other pilgrims heading north. That half-hour setback really kicked my ETA in the ass, so getting a feel for the area before bed, it was no longer an option. With white knuckles, I gutted out the last few miles of this trip in the dark before I found a suitable place to lay my head for the night. My fuzzy teeth needed a lot of attention before a backseat nest was arranged and groggily clambered into. And we've made it. Trying something a little bit different. Usually I'm in the front seat, but I'm gonna try and save my back because this isn't just a day trip. We're gonna be here for a little while, so gonna try and curl up in the back here, maybe extend the legs a little bit, and yeah, get some sweet dreams. We got a lot of fishing to do tomorrow. If anyone out there was wondering, the back seat, it isn't great. But hey, it might as well be a Hilton this far out in the sticks. And since it was still pretty early in the day, I decided to take breakfast on the road and do some preliminary scouting. The scouting I was supposed to do last night. The general game plan was to get my eyes on the river and drop waypoints at fishy looking runs. Between the points I dropped during prior research and the ones added during this drive, I had a lot of work ahead of me. But after warming up and wolfing down some breakfast, it was time to get my feet wet. Boots were laced and rods were rigged with the vibrating excitement stemming from the ambiguous words arranged in an old book. Bull trout measured in pounds and cutthroat pushing 18 inches. That and the caffeine really narrowed my focus. Sliding down the worn footpath, my excitement moved back to equilibrium and then dipped once I hit the beach. A can of worms? Are you serious? This was such a discouraging sign.
That was a big bull trout. Holy. Oh! That's number 2.
With the clouds hugging the tops of the ridge, it was still hard to see what exactly took a swipe at my streamer. But when in bull trout country, I would like to assume it was one, but in reality, who knows. So after working through the rest of this run with the streamer, I retreated back to my nymph rod to dredge at the bottom. Reworking this run with a little more precision, I was able to find our first fish of the trip.
That's a big, fat, healthy whitefish right there. Holy cow. You have been eating, my good sir.
I would hate to use the word bycatch, but this guy right here is probably third or fourth on our list of fish we want to catch. Nonetheless, native, beautiful. I think it's time to get him back.
My first whitefish of the trip slunk back into the boulder-bound bottom, and it felt like it was time to seek greener pastures. But before I did, I couldn't help but notice the signs of autumn all around me. In a small eddy at the top of this run, shimmers of red caught my attention, and sure enough, looks like the kokanee were on their final suicide mission upstream. If that scene out of a postcard doesn't scream fall, I don't know what will. Moving upstream, pops of gravel reminded me of my rocky relationship with roads. When I'm fishing, roads are not my friend. Asphalt, gravel, and even dirt can all keep their distance. In fact, they are merely tolerated up until the minute I hit the trailhead and hoof it into the backcountry. Fly rod in hand, the mere sound and sight of a road is enough to boil my blood. This easy pipeline to places like this bring the traffic, which also brings the trash. Lost are the quiet days alone in the middle of nowhere. Instead, hearing the jacked up fishing rig rattle its rod rack along makes me feel like I'm in downtown Manhattan during rush hour. So, I cannot tell you why I did this to myself or why I thought this was a good idea, but I let the outdated words from some old timer convince me to play hopscotch with access points along a pothole-stricken gravel road. Excuses like, well, people, they ought to be out hunting, or, oh, kids, they're gonna be back in school, gave me false confidence that this world-famous stream would have lost the majority of its annual traffic just in time for the bull trout migration. And boy howdy was I wrong. This was such a lazy mistake on my part, and as the sun burned off the mist of the morning, the light rays caught the neon signs of tents and the metallic tint of trucks lining every major campground upstream. My breadcrumb trail of waypoints only grew as more anglers showed up on my radar. Deep breaths were required as I managed to find another free access point further upstream.
Oh my god, that's a big whitefish. Wow.
That is a stacked up whitefish. That is a big whitefish. Holy cow. Oh my gosh, that was a kokanee.
Hooking that kokanee, it got my mind moving, and after a few casts, I cracked into the old fly bucks and dug deep, and I mean deep, for the one and only egg I have ever carried. This little West Slope was the first trout of the day and a very eager egg muncher. He swam back strong, and more omelet action ensued.
On the egg, let's go.
Now I can probably count on one hand the number of times I've actually caught a fish on an egg, and this one is added to the pile. That's so funny. Let's get him back, and I'm gonna explain to you why I wanted to put on the egg, just to see. So yeah, let's get this guy back. Alrighty, I apologize for the rambles, but I think that fish needs some context. Our morning's been slow, and I'm trying to figure it out. This is a brand new system during a brand new season that I'm just, throwing it at the wind, seeing what I can't find. But what I did notice, and hopefully the GoPro footage from earlier in the morning shows up all right, but I'm seeing kokanee in this system. During the fall, they come up, they run, so to speak, up to these tributaries. And so they're in the spawning phase right now. And I thought to myself, okay, well, if there's fish spawning, then the magic egg actually means something. There's a specific hatch, so to speak. And it's always just funny to me how when you accumulate flies, you never know when you'll need them. I actually traded my buddy Sam, you guys know Sam, for this egg. I gave him a bunch of FASADDs and he gave me this awesome little egg pattern. I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever use it, but who cares? I'll throw it in the box, see what it can't do. And yeah, like I said, one of like maybe 4 fish on an egg. I don't fish them much, but it's a good sign. Again, that's kind of bycatch. The cutthroat are awesome. The whitefish were, whew, those things are huge. But we're going for bull trout. We're targeting bull trout, so to speak. So just kind of hole hopping's been the name of the game so far. It's just, I don't know, figuring it out. We've got a couple more days, so I say we get back in there and yeah, try and conjure something up. Hopefully we can actually catch a kokanee. That would be really cool.
Feeling content with the handful of fish I found, it was time to pick up the streamer rod yet again and fish out the rest of this run. Down at the tail end of this pool, car-sized boulders lined the riverbed. And even though it must have been 12 to 15 feet deep, the water was so clear and you could see a few shadowy figures weaving their way around. This dark figure was no doubt the fish I was looking for, and not soon after officially spotting the first bull trout of the day, I also got my first hit. A lightning strike on the tail end of my articulated fly resulted in an empty strip set as my single hook streamer flew out of the water with force. This was frustrating. Insult to injury, only a few casts later, another shadow materialized and darted at my fishy imitation, only to Tokyo tail drift in the opposite direction at the very last second. Surely they were onto my shenanigans at this point, so I decided to offer up a different approach with my nymph rod. This is personally why I like to carry 2 rods when I'm out on the water. I had high hopes for bull trout, but after hooking into and landing an additional whitefish, it was clear to see my offerings were only getting intercepted and stirring up the pool. With the sun now higher in the sky, it was time to leave this roadside spot alone and keep knocking off waypoints upstream. And it should be said, each dot on the map was placed with pure speculation. Satellite maps are a phenomenal tool for us anglers, but they have diminishing returns, especially when trying to accurately judge water, like depth and speed. So once the boots hit the ground, expectations don't always match with what the eyes see. Just to keep momentum rolling, it was nice to catch a few smaller fish. A nice mix of cutthroat and rainbow trout helped keep my attention. However, now that the sun was up, I was starting to notice more and more bright red figures darting around the river. These micro salmon were a double-edged sword, and I had a hunch they were very much working against me in this situation. While I shed some layers, I think it's time to explain. You might be wondering, what in the heck are these micro salmon you're talking about? Well, have you ever heard of kokanee? Well, let me start here. Have you ever heard of sockeye salmon? Well, everyone should have. They are one of the more iconic Pacific salmon species. I have no clue where in their evolutionary race they decided to make such drastic changes, but when they make their inevitable push to spawning grounds, they completely lose their saltwater silver. While other salmon are slightly more subtle, sockeye turn bright red and green like a Christmas order at a New Mexican joint. From northern Alaska all the way down to Oregon, you can find these bright red bullets swimming upstream around this time of year. But the question still stands. What the heck are kokanee? Essentially, they are just the landlocked version of their Pacific running relative. Naturally occurring in various places, these lake-dwelling salmon have been reintroduced to countless lakes and reservoir systems throughout the United States and Canada purely as a recreational resource. Normally, these fish stick to deep lakes and hoover up as much zooplankton as their stomachs can handle. However, in the summer and fall, sexually mature adults will ditch their silver camo and battle the upstream current for one shot at love. All the kokanee I saw range from about 6 inches to 12 inches, but they can get bigger. Generally, just because of their lake and reservoir confinement, they don't grow as big as the ocean run fish. The picture I'm painting is a tad bit rushed, but I'm hoping you start to understand, because this is where the double-edged part of this sword comes into play. The positive in this situation is that they are super cool to see. They are a great angling resource in the lakes as well as when they run. But the not so great part of this is that they are a bite-sized Swedish fish snack for any predatory fish in the system. Be it from the eggs being laid, the rotting bodies floating past, and the live salmon jockeying for position, they offer food for predators of all sizes. Here you can actually see a resident bull trout nest robbing a school of spawning kokanee. He was absolutely ruining their day, but I have to imagine one of these small kokanee would make a bigger bull trout very fat and very happy for a long time. And from my experience, full fish, they tend not to be aggressive fish. Giving an honest look at the gray and white streamer I was throwing, I felt like I may be running a fool's errand. With tired or dying salmon stacked up thick in almost every major pool, my streamer throwing shoulder seemed to be hurting in vain. Some of the resident West Slope took interest in my bright streamer, but some part of me thinks that that strike was more out of aggression rather than actual hunger. Nevertheless, these few fish were still very much appreciated. However, as the fishable holes started to become fewer and much further in between, my reliance on this spot hopping strategy was starting to dig out a big pit of regret in my stomach. Moving like this, it took up a lot of time, and especially as the shadows grew longer along the bank, it was a struggle to even find an access point without a truck or multiple anglers already there. This streamer eating cutty was another nice addition to the haul, but upon further inspection, its crooked smile was the nail in the coffin. Scarred up fish lips are a telltale sign of intense fishing pressure. Frustrated with this, I needed to reevaluate my entire life and give some much needed attention to my now ravenous appetite. Cars were counted as I wolfed down my freeze-dried dinner and moseyed down the road. Warm food in my belly was a welcome sense of comfort on this somewhat grinding day, but with the rod still rigged up, I figured I would make one last stop on the day, and I gotta say, I'm glad that I did. Come on. Whew. God dang, come on, baby. Heavy tippet and healthy horsing didn't seem to be enough to get this fish in. I could tell this was no run-of-the-mill cutty. And just for viewership's sake, I'm gonna mute out my colorful language once I got this massive West Slope to the net. There's no doubt in my mind that this was my biggest West Slope of the season and possibly of my life. This was such an impressive specimen, and because of that, I feel very lucky I was able to grab a couple close-up images before attempting a two-hander, because, well...
He flopped out. Dang it. I couldn't get a two-hander on him, but that was, without a doubt, my biggest West Slope cutthroat ever, man. When today has been a grind, like it has been, that kind of fish, man, that makes it worth it. That is so amazing. Wow. Wow. Seriously? Well, that's on. It's setting fast, and I think I'm gonna call it there. After that last fish, I mean, you can't ask for much more than that. So the rods are broken down. I'm gonna get out of here, start making my way upstream a bit. But as far as the day one goes, I would say there's a bit of a learning curve. I think this place gets pressured pretty heavily. I saw a lot of cars, more than I was expecting. And, you know, it's a Saturday, I get that. Some of them might have been hunters, but the amount of fly fishing specific trucks, like with the whole rigs and everything on them, it was unreal. So I'm sure a lot of the holes that I was fishing, especially towards the mid-afternoon and evening, I'm almost sure they've been hitting multiple times throughout the day. So I'm gonna seek some solace upstream, and yeah, keep my fingers crossed. Maybe Sunday, go a little further back, and then kind of make my way back as we got a little bit more time during the weekday to, you know, fish these more pressured spots. But deep breath of cold air. It's getting chilly fast, so let's get to going.
Making the final trudge back to the truck, I sat on the tailgate and munched the last scraps of my mango rice. Unsure of what tomorrow might hold, I tried my best to nurture my expectations as I continued to pass by crowded campsites. Darkness settled in as I rolled up to my last backup plan higher in the system. I would hate to sound desperate, but at this point, I was really starting to reach the end of my rope. My alarm gave a ceremonious ring, echoing through my tiny truck, but the creeping cold shivered up my spine well before the light started to show. All signs literally pointed towards this being the right move. Limited cars in the area, and nothing but a hiking path in front of me, I could at least rest easy knowing I would have this section mostly to myself. As soon as I set foot on the narrow path, I found that same hair-raising feeling that only being alone in the woods gives you. This was very much bear country, and my surroundings were oddly foreign, which assaulted my senses. Taller trees made for darker woods, and the hanging moss, it left me with a sinister feeling. The fuse of fall had been more than lit, and the early signs of changing colors were starting to pop up all over. The clinging fog and the eerily still valleys left me with an uneasy feeling, at least until I saw the sun. The warmth brought on helped to shake off the damp cold, and the critters in the area sprung to life as the fog lifted. A mountain sunrise is inspiring enough to breathe hope into any situation. But after an hour plus and a few miles on the trail, I had made a massive time investment, and so far, there was not much to show.
Well, that is number one on the board, and it feels really good to get that skunk off, especially being this far upstream. It's kind of a risk. I didn't know what to expect, but yeah, that's nice. At least we didn't get skunk. But I think it's important to note how far upstream I am. I went probably 15 or 20 road miles up, and then I'm probably on another 2 or 3 just by trail. So it's not even considering all the river miles in between the windings and turnings, whatnot. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that I'm still seeing kokanee this far upstream. Usually they stop, but these guys, they're little marathon runners. They're going so freaking far. And so I figured, okay, well, if there's kokanee here, I might as well tie on an egg and yeah, nymph them up. And Sam, that's a big shout out to you, brother, man. I can't believe this freaking egg is actually working. And it's so frustrating. It's like, okay, if the cutthroat are gonna eat the egg, why wouldn't the bull trout? But I guess we would need to see the bull trout to know they're here, blah, blah, blah. All right, I might throw a couple more in there, but otherwise, let's keep moving upstream. Time check is just before 11. This gamble did not pay off. I have well overextended myself, and it's just long, flat, really featureless water like this. Saw one bull trout earlier in the morning, and since then, nada. So it's time to get out of here, bushwhack, and take a deep breath and try and figure something out here.
I would love to sit here and say that I cracked the code and found the fish, but this couldn't be further from the truth. I fished quite a few more runs with nothing more than a sniff, and frustratingly, I dogged my way back to the trail and once again was heading back to the truck. The sun was now hot, and the frozen hands from the morning had turned to sweaty palms and very heavy steps. My mind, it was more than made up at this point, and a change of scenery was necessary. I'm no stranger to pulling the plug, but this is one time where my persistence, it just did not pay off. The real plan B had ironically been blocked by a landslide from earlier in the weekend, and really, that was that. At this point, I know when to hold them and when to fold them. Better to save the days off for future adventure when conditions prove to be a bit more favorable, because when you work a 9-to-5 job, it makes no sense to grind your gears when you could just save the days and make hay when the sun's actually shining. So, with my tail tucked tight, I white-knuckled through the night and got my way back to Boise. The abrupt end to my last big send of the season, it was frustrating, but most of my anger, it was pointed directly at myself. I should have known better than to trust a random excerpt from an outdated angling book. The pressure on this river was truly wild, even late in the season. With school in session and other outdoorsmen focusing on other outdoor activities, the access points at this river were still packed, but I'm surely repeating myself at this point. Clearly, road rivers are not my niche. I'm young, I'm in shape, and most of all, I enjoy the grind. At this point in my life, backcountry destinations need to be my main focus. This famous fork should have never been an option on my hit list, but hey, we all make mistakes. Now, taking a quick look away from the pressure and focusing on the river itself, the kokanee and I were both swimming upstream. It was a very cool spectacle to see them do their final dash up the rapids to carry on the next generation of micro salmon. But my main target, the elusive bull trout, most likely had zero interest in my streamer with all this free food constantly swimming past. The silver lining of this massive swing and a miss would be that I got to see new country, I got to catch my PB whitefish and West Slope, And most of all, I was able to witness for myself the true nature of this fabled fork. Well, howdy folks. If you are seeing this, then that means the video is over. And like always, I just have to say thank you so much for sticking around and watching these videos all the way through. It really means the world that you guys enjoy these videos, and outside of the YouTube algorithm, you know, the whole like, comment, subscribe thing, it's all a racket in my mind. I just like seeing other folks getting stoked on cool fishing adventures. And just because this particular video is over does not mean the adventure is over. We would love to have you around and see you in the next video. And if you can't wait and you're looking for some more Fly All Season action, go check out our other platforms. We got Instagram, Discord, and even a website. And if you're shy about leaving YouTube comments, don't worry. All those other platforms are great places to reach out to me directly so we can kind of talk back and forth, talk shop, so to speak. And if those extra platforms prove to be insufficient, you just can't wait to get on some more Fly All Season content, go check out the Patreon. This is more information-based videos, let's just say. It's a great way to get into the nitty-gritty and the exacts of an adventure like this. It's pretty much just me sitting down and talking to you as a friend, what I did, how I did, and more of the why I did, if that makes sense. And it's also an amazing way to support the channel and help these videos kind of go through. And piggybacking off of that, just got to give a quick shout out to the various brands that partner with Fly All Season and help make these adventures possible. You know who you are? Thank you very much. But that is more than enough for me, folks. You know the deal. Wherever you find yourself, be it in the Idaho backcountry or in your backyard, I sure hope you keep those feet in the water. And until next time, tight lines.